Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about healing the past. And we might think what's done is done, but much or maybe even most of what we think, what we believe, and even how we feel is influenced by our past experience, our unresolved emotional issues, trauma or wounding, and often outdated ways of seeing ourselves, our ideas about what's possible, or even what's desirable for ourselves. And of course, that bleeds out into what we think, feel, or believe about others, and about the world at large. And although we can't change past events or circumstances, we can absolutely change our perspective on them. And when we change our perspective, how we feel, what we think, and believe changes as well. And from this point of view, much of my work in spiritual psychology is about helping people heal the past by changing their perspective. And again, when we change our perspective, we actually change our experience. As Friedrich Nietzsche said, there are no facts, only interpretations. And so how do we heal the past? Well, the first step is to face it, to be honest about our experience, to tell our story, whether we do that with a friend, a therapist or spiritual advisor, or through journaling or writing, bringing our personal truth out of the ruminations of our mind and into the physical world in the form of words, either written or spoken, in itself can be transformative. I know I spent a lot of time in vague mental and emotional loops, many of which were terribly painful or anxiety-producing. And just to get real, it's not like I still don't do those things today from time to time or even regularly, but thank God I have lots of tools that will bring me forward. And I'm going to share some of those with you today in how to come to new perspectives and heal the past. So the first step is to get honest about our experience, to tell the truth, to put it on the table. And that in itself, again, can be quite transformative. It's very easy to spend months, years, even decades in avoidance or denial of things that are painful. And although that's completely understandable, the tragedy of avoidance and denial is that it keeps those painful perspectives frozen, and they never get a chance to evolve, dissolve, or transform. And although there are certainly things that time alone will heal, there are also many things that time will not heal. In fact, with negative core beliefs and defensive structures, deep existential fears, time can often congeal our suffering rather than heal it. So we got to be willing to go down into the basement of our own consciousness, empty out those closets, clean out under the bed, review and clear out those dusty old memories, and sort through them. A lot of that stuff's outdated. Why do we have it in storage? And a lot of times it's because, like children afraid to go into the basement, I know going into the basement as a kid was terrifying for me. I used to run up the stairs as fast as I could because the boogeymen down there were going to get me. And those boogeymen are my own inner unresolved demons. And when we turn the lights on, the boogeymen disappear. So there was a young mother of two who came to me, Marlena, very attractive, petite young Asian woman, and she was struggling in her marriage. And as I often do in my early sessions with clients, we did what I call an emotional biography to get a sense of some of the core wounding from the past that wants to be revealed and healed. And it came out that she was raped by a friend of her brother's when she was 12 years old during a boys' sleepover. And she never told anyone about it, and it was a marking point for a complete change in how she felt about herself, of course how she felt about boys and men, but it really colored her whole perspective and outlook. And as she told me the story of what had happened, it was really clear that she blamed herself. And so we did a very powerful process called soul retrieval. And we brought some body-centered mindfulness into this chronic anxiety and self-criticism and a deep sense of shame that she carried with her almost constantly. And I asked her if she could sense or feel or imagine the very first time she felt that particular shame, anxiety, and self-hatred. And how old was that part of herself? And using the power of the active imagination, we came upon this 12-year-old girl the night that she was sexually assaulted. And we took a moment and connected with her own best adult self in present time, grounding in all the experience that she has had and all the work that she had done since that trauma years ago. And I asked how her adult self from present time felt about this young girl in her nightgown. And she burst out crying. And she said that poor girl is blaming herself for what happened. And we started a dialogue between her present and compassionate adult self and this wounded girl, this aspect of her own soul self that had been frozen in psychological time from this traumatic event for decades. And her adult self comforted this girl and told her that it wasn't her fault what happened, and that it was a terrible thing, and that she had carried this burden alone with shame and guilt for all that time. And we brought that girl out of that place in historic trauma and into present time and showed her Marlene's life today. She had children and a nice home and a good job, and her life wasn't perfect, but things had turned out okay. And this inner relationship with this very vulnerable part of herself shifted from denial and rejection and shame into understanding, support, and tenderness. And we talked about how her present adult self was her own healthy, internalized caregiver, and that she could treat herself with the same kindness, love, and attention that she gave to her own children. And it completely shifted her experience, and particularly her inner perspective on that trauma that had colored and directed much of her life, particularly her inner world and her beliefs, the attitudes about herself. And that radical shift to realize that she had taken way too much responsibility, that she had been victimized, that her vulnerable and innocent self had been crushed, radically shifted the way that she saw herself, some of her core beliefs, and even the way that she felt like she needed to make decisions going forward. And although it didn't erase the rape experience, it dynamically changed her relationship with it, and particularly her relationship with herself. And from that shift in relationship with herself, from blame and shame to love and compassion, it had a pretty profound impact on the other relationships in her life as well. And although I've been journaling for decades and have lots of friends and advisors that I work with and talk to in my own continuing personal growth progress, I have found it invaluable to review or take a meta perspective on my life on an annual or semi-annual basis. And that's deeply informed by the 12-step process of the fourth step, which is to take a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And if you want to learn more about the 12 steps, you can check out episode 61, the 12 steps for everyone. Set of excellent spiritual principles that will supercharge your self-transformation. But if we continue our own personal growth and maturation, I kind of see life like a spiral staircase. And whatever the environment that staircase is set in are the circumstances and experiences that I've had that continue to unfold. But as I move up that spiral staircase, my view on the environment or my own life continues to shift and change, that I can grow in perspective, in awareness. Like Marlene, I can grow in compassion, self-love, and understanding, can develop forgiveness, acceptance, inner peace, as well as hope for the future and an expanding sense of what's possible in my own personal power as we move up that evolutionary path of our own expanded awareness. It's very easy, common, even very human, to get stuck on a particular step, see things in a limited and static way. We can tell ourselves, that's just the way it is. There is no just the way it is, because the way that it is always a perspective. Talk about teaching art. And one time I brought a bicycle in for my kids to draw, and I had them all sit around it And each one of them had a different perspective. And every single drawing was completely different. One boy just focused on a close-up of the nubs on the tire. Lots of them drew the whole bike, but again, it was from different perspectives. So some from the front, some from the back, some drew the chain and pedals. And the stories that we tell ourselves, the narratives that we have, particularly about our past, are always based on a perspective. And it's not that the perspective is untrue, and particularly if the perspective is helpful, encouraging, nourishing, or supportive, there might not be a need to change it. But if our inner narratives, our core beliefs, are destructive, painful, even traumatic, then there is tremendous value in healing the past. And there are many people that can help you with that process. And we do need help with it. In fact, accepting help is often a big perspectival shift. Being able to receive, to acknowledge our own limitations and the value of cooperation and interdependence. So there are so many wonderful, understanding and patient people, many amazing therapeutic modalities and great therapists and healers, spiritual practices, many ways to move ourselves up the spiral staircase of our own life. And so I wish for you to heal the past. And once we open to that possibility, life will present the opportunities to do that will be most beneficial to us. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like some help healing your past, I have some spots for new clients. Shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com, or you can check out my 10-day course on healing trauma. Right now it's available on Insight Timer. There's a link in the show notes. I've had over 900 people do that powerful process of deeply healing and transformative inner work. I encourage you to check it out. I have some other free workshops coming up on Insight Timer in the next few weeks, including a free Transforming Trauma workshop next Wednesday, May 4th, 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern, 8 p.m. GMT. Deep gratitude to my supporters on Patreon and those who donate to support this podcast. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValle McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.